A moment from last night's Indiana Fever matchup against Portland has exploded across social media, and it's easy to see why fans are demanding answers. Caitlin Clark appeared visibly frustrated on the bench during an exchange with head coach Stephanie White, who was later seen tossing a clipboard before Clark was replaced by Raven Johnson as Portland went on a decisive 13-2 run. Many fans view that sequence as a turning point in the Fever's 100-84 loss, arguing that the issue wasn't talent but coaching decisions and game management. With criticism of White growing after her post-game comments, the debate over her future with the franchise has intensified.
Had 3 assists in the first 3 minutes of the game, then both her and Aaliyah checked out, I think, around the 6:30 mark. Then Portland went on a 13-2 run. Just what was the reasoning for checking them out, or did either of them request a sub?
Well, AB's still on a minutes restriction, so she's coming out. And typically that's around the same time that we've been taking Caitlin out before. We didn't in Golden State just because, quite honestly, we did Raven in that environment without another ball handler on the floor. So that's been our typical substitution pattern.
To understand why this moment has generated so much discussion, it's important to look at the full sequence of events. Indiana opened the game playing efficiently, with Clark recording 3 assists in the first 3 minutes while Aaliyah Boston established a strong presence inside. The Fever quickly built an 8-2 lead, showing clear rhythm on both ends of the floor. Despite that momentum, Stephanie White removed both Clark and Boston around the 6:30 mark of the first quarter, with Indiana leading 8-4 and no apparent issues involving fouls or injuries. White later explained that the move followed the team's usual substitution pattern, but Portland immediately responded with a 13-2 run. By the time Clark and Boston returned, Indiana's 6-point advantage had become a 7-point deficit, creating a dramatic swing that occurred entirely while the team's top players were on the bench.
Look at this. Crashed out on her, subbed her out. Look, then she throws the clipboard down. Throws the clipboard. Okay. Don't sign no epic deal, Caitlin Clark. Get the f out of Indiana. Leave this clown show of an organization. And Caitlin Clark got to the podium and let it be known that Stephanie White was her problem tonight, not the ref.
That sequence provides the backdrop for the clip that has been circulating online. Clark can be seen showing visible frustration as she exchanges words with White before being replaced by Raven Johnson while Portland continues extending its lead. Rather than reacting to a missed shot or a controversial call, Clark appeared to be watching a game slip away after Indiana's early success, fully aware of how quickly the momentum had changed.
Out of here. And Caitlin Clark addressed it and let it be known that her problem wasn't the fouls, it wasn't the refs, her problem was Stephanie White. Caitlin Clark come out and let it be known. Let's go, man. This is crazy. I can't believe Stephanie White got some nerve like she's some championship coach to be talking to Caitlin Clark.
What makes the footage resonate with so many viewers is not just the tense interaction between Clark and White but the circumstances surrounding it. Portland's 13-2 surge didn't come from a sudden shift in talent. It came while
right over the top with the floater.
Launch sets the screen late with Clark switched on to her. Late attacking, lowers the head, able to roll it into the corner. Late trying to find the roll. They doubled it. Gustafson, the catch. Gustafson up with the left. Parker flips it back up top to Late. Late checked by Clark. Late free throw line jumper.
Indiana's 2 most impactful players were sitting on the bench because of a predetermined rotation, despite the team controlling the game at that moment. After the game, many observers interpreted Clark's comments as signaling that her frustration was directed toward coaching decisions rather than officiating. White defended the substitutions as part of the team's standard rotation, suggesting she did not view the 13-2 run as a consequence of those decisions.
Season high for the rookie. Gustafson will let it fly from the corner. Oh, it is good. The forced foul on that last possession. See the foul trouble piling up for Indiana. Exler inside. Gustafson, the flipper.
Since I was about 10 years old playing against her in AAU.
Late draws 2, flips it up. Gustafson. Gustafson will set the screen. Late over to Gustafson. Gustafson inside. Clark defending. Carlton. Barker at the top. Gustafson down low. You already know what's going to.
However, analysts quickly highlighted the timing, noting how dramatically the game changed the moment Clark and Boston left the floor. To many critics, this wasn't about a single timeout or isolated mistake but about prioritizing a rigid rotation over the flow of the game. Portland capitalized immediately, and the effects lingered long after Clark returned. Her visible frustration appeared less like an emotional reaction and more like the response of a player watching a manageable game drift out of reach. By the time she checked back in, the groundwork had already been laid for Portland's explosive 37-point third quarter. As discussion around the game continued, many viewers came away believing that Clark's frustration centered more on coaching decisions than on foul calls or officiating. Portland's 37-point third quarter became one of the defining stretches of the game. Rather than being the result of a brief hot streak, critics argue it exposed defensive issues that had already appeared earlier and were never effectively addressed as the game progressed.
Yeah, rotations were a little bit slow, and everything that, in every coverage that we really tried, and when we switched, they did a great job exploiting it. They played with great energy, so you got to give Portland credit. I thought they were really good. They were aggressive. Obviously, they shot the ball well, almost 40% from three, 50% from the field. It's a recipe for success, and we just got to be a little bit more disruptive in everything that we're doing.
Portland's offense operated with remarkable efficiency, led by Carla Leto's 18 points and 12 assists. She consistently identified openings created by Indiana's defensive switching, exploiting mismatches and weak spots before the Fever could react. When a defense switches frequently without ideal matchups in place, offenses can anticipate where advantages will appear, and Portland repeatedly targeted those areas throughout the game. Megan Gustafson's perfect 8-for-8 shooting performance and 22 points reflected more than just individual efficiency. Indiana's defensive breakdowns repeatedly placed her in favorable scoring positions, while Portland's guards consistently found opportunities to feed the ball inside. Gustafson rarely had to create her own offense, instead benefiting from clean looks generated by Portland's execution and Indiana's slow rotations.
I guys feel like any of the officiating rule changes are impacting how you're able to play as a team defensively?
Officiating wasn't our problem tonight.
After the game, Clark acknowledged issues involving anticipation, activity, and defensive awareness, admitting that Indiana struggled with its rotations and that Portland effectively attacked switching situations. While that demonstrated accountability, critics argue those same defensive challenges were amplified by the system Indiana employed throughout the game. Clark's foul trouble became another major factor in the outcome. She picked up her fourth foul midway through the third quarter and quickly collected her fifth after returning, limiting her playing time while Portland stretched its advantage to 25 points. She finished with roughly 21 minutes on the floor, many of them coming after Indiana was already playing from behind. Observers also questioned the lack of noticeable defensive adjustments as Portland continued finding success in the second half. Confusion between various coverages remained evident, and while Portland navigated those situations effectively, Indiana struggled to do the same. The result was a defensive collapse that overshadowed solid offensive contributions from several Fever players.
Hold the board. Clark eyes down the floor. Up ahead, Boston. Great catch. The vision from Clark and Boston to the rim, and Indiana sprints out to an 8-2 lead.
And
The box score paints a picture that many Fever fans found frustrating. Aaliyah Boston scored 18 points, Kelsey Mitchell added 17, Sophie Cunningham contributed 15, and Timson chipped in 11 off the bench, giving Indiana 4 players in double figures. Despite that production, the Fever still lost by 16 points. Clark's final stat line showed 6 points, 6 assists, 1 turnover, 5 fouls, and only 21 minutes played, marking one of the lowest scoring games of her professional career. While some might label it an off night, supporters point to her efficient playmaking, limited opportunities, and disrupted rhythm as evidence that the circumstances around the game mattered just as much as the final numbers. Another point of criticism centered on Indiana's Clark-Boston pick and roll, widely viewed as one of the team's most effective offensive actions.
Clark in the paint. Retrieves the dribble. Mitchell, what a cut! What a delivery from Clark!
it's a little.
To analysts who reviewed the game, the Fever appeared to move away from that approach after Clark committed a single early turnover. Rather than continuing to lean on a combination that was creating opportunities, the offense reportedly shifted toward more isolation-based possessions. Clark opened the game with 3 assists in the first 3 minutes, but after the substitution and offensive adjustments, she spent long stretches functioning more as a secondary option than as the engine of the offense. Mitchell's 17 points demonstrated the scoring potential Indiana possesses when its offensive actions are flowing properly, while Cunningham's 15 highlighted the value of balanced contributions from the wing. Timpson's 11 points off the bench provided another encouraging sign for the team's depth. When viewed collectively, those performances suggest Indiana has enough offensive talent to compete. Clark still finished with 6 assists and only 1 turnover despite difficult circumstances, making the 16-point defeat even more puzzling to critics.
Stephanie White has got to go. This relationship is over. She crashed out and benched Caitlin Clark throughout the game. That is why Caitlin Clark was out of it. This is nasty. The owner needs to step in and fire this goofball, this freaking clown of a coach. See,
they argue the issue wasn't a lack of talent but decisions that disrupted successful offensive actions and removed key players during important stretches. Calls for Stephanie White's dismissal existed before the Portland game, but this matchup intensified the conversation dramatically. The footage from the bench and White's post-game comments provided a specific moment that many fans could point to as evidence supporting their concerns. Her explanation that the substitutions were simply part of the normal rotation did little to satisfy critics who had just watched Portland immediately seize momentum. The frustration only grew when attention shifted to execution rather than the substitution decisions themselves, particularly after several Fever players produced strong offensive performances despite the loss.
Get her out of here, bro. Get her out of here. Caitlin Clark said it. The refs what? Caitlin Clark had 5 fouls. Normally, she talked greasy about the refs. She let it be known. The refs wasn't my problem. I had no problems with the refs. You know who my problem was. It's this clown Stephanie.
Clark's post-game comments took a noticeably different approach, focusing on her own performance rather than external factors. By emphasizing areas she could improve personally, Clark projected accountability and responsibility. That approach stood in contrast to the explanations many fans associated with the coaching staff, fueling additional criticism. Some supporters have become so frustrated that they believe only continued losses will force organizational changes. Critics have also scrutinized White's broader coaching record, arguing that certain decisions have consistently limited the potential of a roster built around one of the league's brightest young stars. For many, the Portland game became a highly visible example supporting those concerns.
Nerve talking to Caitlin Clark like this, snatching her out of the game, throwing the clipboard down. Who the f do you think you are? You are a bum. You are a bum. You are a piece of garbage of a coach, man. This is crazy, man. Caitlin Clark has got to get out of Indiana. Caitlin Clark has to get out of Indiana immediately, bro. I don't care how.
The situation has also placed pressure on Indiana's front office, particularly as questions grow louder regarding the team's long-term direction. Supporters of a coaching change argue that the current structure may be limiting both Clark's development and the team's overall ceiling. Some analysts have even warned about the long-term consequences of continued struggles, suggesting that organizational decisions made now could significantly impact the franchise's future. With Clark, Boston, Mitchell, Cunningham, and the rest of the roster showing considerable potential, the 100-84 loss to Portland has become a focal point in evaluating where the Fever go from here. Consider the overall context of the game. Indiana had 4 players score in double figures and entered the matchup with Clark averaging 22.5 points and 8.5 assists per game, yet still came away with a loss against a Portland team playing the second night of a back-to-back. Critics argue that the talent on the roster is evident, but that maximizing it remains the central challenge. With Portland now sitting ahead of Indiana in the standings despite being an expansion franchise, questions about coaching and organizational direction continue to grow. As the debate intensifies, fans remain divided on whether a coaching change is the solution, making it one of the biggest storylines surrounding the Fever right now.